In this video, we take a Dremel to the FTX's chassis, it finally gets put back together and we reveal its new look. Just making a few little snapshots to put together for the rest of this build. We got as far as doing the front axle last time, re-greasing that, doing all the bearings. I've now got the matching set of upgrade shocks have arrived, so that completes the front end. That's the motor plate. Now, it was all these voids before, which always get full up with mud, so we filled that with hot glue. It does look suspiciously like man custard, but I promise you it is hot glue. And then we're going to swap to this axial motor, just because the HPI one in the spares box is an absolute trooper. It's not let us down, but also, you know, it's had a lot of use. So I'm swapping in a fresh one just to see how it lasts. But we got gaps on the shelf now from selling a couple of trucks, so there's a hobby wing axe is going to be going in there. I'm going to treat myself, as well as the new build of the mud truck. So yeah, 35 turn going in, 17 tooth pinion, which we had on a 550, but I think it'll work well on this. And then we'll start assembling the rear. Definitely hot glue, promise. That's the spur and pinion put on now. We've got the standard size spur, and the pinion we've gone from a 14 or a 13, I think possibly, to the 17. Now we changed to this with the larger 550 motor because it rotated slower. We wanted some more wheel speed, but I think going back to a 540, it could have still used a bit more wheel speed, so this should be where it's at, especially with 3S now that we didn't used to run. As for mesh, you want it, that's pretty much perfect along the motor shaft there, so it's got full contact with the teeth. And then if it will focus, hopefully you'll be able to see here between the body posts. Maybe not. There's just a tiny little bit of lash, which means that if you hold one gear still, that gear can just move a tiny little bit, and you want to move it round, stop it, and just check that everywhere you are across the whole range of movement in the gear, in case it's not quite perfectly centered or perfectly true, that you've got that little bit of lash going on. It's not really showing up on camera, but it is there. Just moves that slight little bit. Too tight, you put a lot of strain on, your motor will get warm. Too loose, you run a risk of slipping. It's a bit of a fine art. People say you do the paper trick, but you just find your own way. That's my way. It sort of doesn't come across on camera, it's just by touch. But get the gear cover back on, that's another job done. Then we can get the battery tray on, because I want to see where I can cut this. All of this extra chassis, it's just there to hold the bumper support. But what happens is your wheels only end up about here, and as you're going sort of up or down steep angles, this bit's just in the way. It's dragging on things. It's like an anchor if you're going through mud. I want to get rid of it. Don't need it. It's pointless. Doesn't need to be there. I'm getting rid of it. So with this, it's not going to have loads of LEDs. It's not going to have little shovels and miniature cans of Coke. I want it to be functional. So I'm being ruthless, but we'll get to that in a bit. Ew. That is minging. Cleaning time. There's the rear axle stripped down. It looks pretty manky, but most of it's just old grease with a bit of dirt. There doesn't seem to be any wear to anything, but a lot of cleaning and reassembly with some new bearings. Right, I'm going to call it a night because I haven't even sat down from work yet, and it's like 9 o'clock. It's another rebuilt axle. The rear this time, fresh rubber seal bearings. You got the input shaft bearing there. There's a secondary one inside that. You've then got two large bearings either side of the diff block, a bearing in the end of the axle casing there, and a bearing there. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 bearings in all for an axle. So it's all nice and free, greased up, ready to go. Just put the hexes back on. We can mount that back, and then hopefully that will be on wheels again. And it's just a case of battery tray, sort the chassis out, and we should be ready to crawl. Right, it's been a few days, and she's now all back in one piece, looking very clean, shiny, and ready to go and ruin all that again by getting in the mud. We received the other pair of alloy shocks, although annoyingly, sometimes the FTX build quality isn't great. This one came, you can't really see it, I've had to wind it up in the vise, but came pre-cross-threaded. You can see it there, so that's never really adjustable. But yeah, we've got the Chinesium prop shafts on, front and rear. So we try those out, see if there's little E-clips that hold them together. Rebuilt gearbox, axial motor, rear axle back on and rebuilt. So we're now on to the next stage, which I must admit I messed up on. I bought a really cool body. I wanted this to be like a crawler Beetle with the axles hanging out and just really cool. But I didn't do my research because idiot, and there's no way that, look how short that is, if you can even see it. I know it's in a bag, it's too disappointing to even get out. But that will fit the Thunder Tiger, so that's going on that. So in the meantime, I went out and spent the rest of my meagre budget on... No, not on that, that's my Helion. Introducing the very generic and slightly disappointing Absema CR005 truck thing. Yeah... As you can see, even though this was sold as a 313mm wheelbase, it can't be, because this is and that isn't. So the front, I'm gonna modify this. We're gonna have to sort of remove that section so it can slide back more, re-drill that hole further along. That will tuck in nicely. And the rear, now it was always the plan to bobtail the rear. From that point onwards, there's nothing but a bit of metal to hold the bumper, and it's pointless, it gets hung up. So that's obviously going to now get cut back there by the battery tray. Now, don't be afraid, they are only toys. And in future, if you want to fit a bumper, they're all on big, long, like, stalks. So, you know, they still fit. You just make up that gap, no problem. And it means, although that rear wheel doesn't sit, you know, nicely in the arch like the front one, I always wanted the rear wheel to be the furthermost point, and you can see from there it's only just the furthermost point. But now any obstacle you travel down, you'll have the control of the rear wheels, the braking, and you'll be able to reverse up near vertical objects as well, so it'd be handy for getting out of situations. So yeah, we've got some cutting to do for a little bit of arch mods on the back. Whenever you do a new shell, before you go ahead and paint it, just flex up, make sure you got all the clearance you need, so that when you're out there, you're not messing up your new shell or cutting into your tyres or just generally binding up your driveline and failing and just being useless. So I'm going to get the shell into paint, and while the shell's drying off, I'm going to brave it and chop that chassis. Now, I've only got some dregs of paint left from painting the Comet. I don't actually know how much is in there, so it's meant to be going purple. It may be sort of blotchy purple, bit of white, just general life disappointment, but who knows, we'll give it a go. Oh, she's pretty empty. So the white's not too bad, because I only backed it with white. We might have to do some kind of funky fade. Probably end up with see-through bits at this rate. I should have bought some paint. What a numpty. Well, let's see how it turns out anyway. It's going to get muddy. A good tip with paints, especially old paints where you need to get the dregs out, is to build the pressure in the can. You want to heat them. And not with direct heat or flames or anything like that, but I recommend some hot water, hot enough you can just about touch it. Put the can in up to about that level, and obviously before you start painting, dry off any drips or whatever so it doesn't go on the paint. That hot air just builds up the pressure inside the can a little bit, so between that and shaking it really well, it helps you get the most out of your can of paint. Well, that's all of the paint used up. There's just about enough to back it in white, and we've done some kind of fade. I've got absolutely no idea how it's going to look, but I'll leave it to set, and it is what it is. So next step is remove the battery tray, find out exactly where that cross bracing is, and that's where we can then remove that. Bravery time. Right, so we're going to make a incision here, because at this point where it's braced, it's the furthest most point we need, because the battery tray mounts there. This is just gubbins and draggy and full of mud and... Oh, bravery! Wear eye protection, because danger. Oh no! What have we done? Right, let's give that a tidy up. And that's nearly done. Switch to a little grindy wheel just to tidy up those edges. So there we go, that's one bobtailed chassis bit. You can see what we've removed. So all of that was just excess, really, just to hold the rear bumper. Now the wheels are the furthermost point back. There's nothing going to be hanging this up, dragging in the mud. So we're going to blow that off with the air compressor, give the exposed metal a little bit of paint, put the battery tray back on, and get round to modding the front bumper. But we need the body shell on for that to gauge distance. Next for the snip is the front bumper. We need to take this bit off so it can slide backwards further, and we'll have to re-drill a hole further down the line. There's the front bumper modified, shortened, and a new hole put in to line up with the holes already there. So let's get that fitted and then we're pretty much ready to go. There we go, she's finally back together. Shorter, re-greased, re-bearinged, new motor, new shocks. Should be ready to rock. So let's have a quick run through front to back before we reveal it with the body on. We run through each mod we've done just quickly, and yeah, you get the rough spec, and tomorrow we're going to go try it out. So starting with the front bumper, ignore the angle of it. It is actually level with the chassis rails. It's just been shortened up to fit. And this is a eBay special listed for an Axial SCX 10. You see we've got the alloy diff covers. They're purely cosmetic, but they do look a lot cooler. Panhard bar delete to stop that binding up as we go in. Inside here, we've got the CVD axles rather than the dog bones and cups. Got the optional threaded alloy shock absorbers, one of which came optionally cross-threaded from the factory, so thank you, Chinese factory worker. 20 kilogram servo, stock receiver, custom little strut brace here to stop these flexing so much between the towers. This is an old camber link from a touring car. We'll see that better at the back. Moving on, we've got coronavirus special Chinese prop shafts, which are heavy alloy. Axial 35 turn motor. Metal gears inside there and a 17 tooth pinion. Again, Chinesian prop shafts. Battery tray move forward. Oh, we got the alloy diff blocks inside here and inside the rear. FTX shocks, bobtailed chassis. Yeah, carbon battery tray that's moved forward to aid weight distribution a little bit. What else we got? Metal ends there. Add a little bit of weight and a little bit of extra strength where everything pivots around. 1.9 inch metal beadlock wheels with tall and narrow RC four-wheel drive mud basher tractor tyres. So that's about it. We're going to be running her on 3S, which is only a recent thing. I always used 2 before. This Overlander battery, 5,000 milliamps. It's more than enough power for that. Finally, just got a new body to put on it to finish off the new shortened, sharpened up Fury. And then tomorrow we'll get all this lovely, clean, fresh stuff filthy and maybe even break it, but who knows. Ah, there's a better look. Just camber link, literally. These used to flex really badly. When the suspension was put in load on one side, it'd move in massively. So with that, stiffens it all up. This suspension works a lot better. You actually see the axle moving, articulating, rather than everything flopping about. The other advantage of going to a pickup type body is you see these body posts are really tiny. They were right up here for the Jeep shell. It means they're less likely to sway and break as you roll. So, yep, all good. Let's get the body. Well, I never expected the paint to be great, and it isn't, but we did what we could. It's a damp garage, it's a cold day, it's the dregs of the cans, it's gone a little bit marbly. I don't know if it's going to crack as we start rolling it and using it, but overall, from a distance, it's going to be covered in mud. I like the look. It's a cheap shell, and for proof of concept as to whether this works better when it's shorter and sort of lower down, it will do. And from there on, we can decide, do we go back to a regular shell, do we stay short? But yeah, I'm pretty happy. Nice little fade job. It's a sort of cross between a Suzuki SJ, an old Land Cruiser. It's just like a GTA car when you know it looks like something, but they can't say it does. And at the rear, yeah, we just got, as I was trying to get side on there, the tyre is the last thing that will now hit. So as it rolls down steep hills or anything like that, you'll have full control of the car. It will be the tyre and the wheel speed control and descent, nothing else. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Out she'll go tomorrow, and we get her dirty.